Greetings, everybody out there in internet land. I am here with 4 organizers from Twitter. These are some lovely and somewhat peculiar people who have decided it would be interesting to put on events to get people together from Twitter and spend days together doing all kinds of activities, possibly finding husbands or starting companies or doing a acrobatic theatrical performance. Lots of different activities happen. And I wanted to have a conversation with a bunch of fellow organizers and try and take a view of like what is happening? Like what is this network scene slash community slash sprawling group chats and Twitter accounts? It's kind of a complex task. Like this network is inherently chaotic and pluralistic, and you can't say one thing about it and have it just be true. Like everything you say about it is really limited, and all the other things are also true. And so it's just this big, like, wow, overwhelming, chaotic thing. But the reason I thought it'd be useful to talk with the 4 of us is each of us have organized an event recently between, I think, like 20 and several hundred people for multiple days. And while there's been like, yeah, 1,000 something people have gone to those events and they've all had their own personal experience. And some people are like, wow, it's amazing. And I found my tribe and I'm changing my life. And other people are like, wow, that was so shitty. And people were mean. And, every spectrum of experience has happened at those gatherings. At least the 4 of us and other organizers have a more like concentrated view into the network and can sort of we get to see lots of those experiences happening all at once. And so I thought we can do a conversation which sort of starts with the events that we run and reflect on what's happening there, and then kind of take a step up from that and say, like, does this imply anything about what's happening in the network as a whole? Knowing that that's a very inherently flawed and impossible question to answer, but I thought it could be interesting to speculate together, just because it's fun to talk with your friends about the stuff that you care about, not because we actually know anything or have any like hard powers to make anything happen. Um, to get the ball rolling, I thought it would be useful to like tune in with why would you take on this effort and this risk and this like investment of time and energy and reputation and do that scary thing of saying, I've booked a venue, we're going to have an event on this day, you're all invited. Like, I thought we could go around and just hear a little bit about like, what's your motivation? What are you trying to achieve? Like, what does good look like according to you, just personally? Like, what is it that makes you cross that threshold and take on that big load of effort? And maybe whoever feels most ready to talk can start the round.
I don't mind going. I have a bunch of answers to this question, but the first one that came to mind, in case anybody listening to this doesn't already know, I had a rocky history, spent some time homeless, lots of drugs, that kind of thing. And I had a period of time when I went to college, I remember thinking like, finally, I'll be around like real, like intellectually curious people, like people who want to like think about the way the world works and how people work and things like that. And it just wasn't the case. I sort of like through much effort developed a crew of people where we would have the kind of conversations I really had been wanting to have. And when I moved, I lost that, and I just kind of just never tried again, never really found that again. And that was, I think that probably was a crossroads. And if I had had like something like the scene around me, my life could have gone very differently. And so one of my big motivations is finding the people out there who are where I was.
That's lush.
Nice. Yeah,
Yes.
that really ties in. That really ties in the kind of like mental aspect with the physical aspect, I suppose, which we're now like converging quite nicely. Yeah, I wanted a party.
Success.
Yeah. I did have the privilege of having a little bit of a group around me, but more that because we were a successful share house, we had the infrastructure to see our friends. So I would run parties and they had a certain flavor, but other housemates did different things as well. Like we hosted fundraisers, we helped out Burning Man, barrios, things like that, which I was never into. But the thing that I was into was on the day after, when sometimes people are still awake, but often people have had about 5 hours sleep, and then we're all smoking endless cigarettes in our little smoking area and like really getting deep into some philosophy shit, right? And yeah, I actually started running this thing called balcony philosophy, which was like come to my balcony and do philosophy so that I don't have to wait for a party for this to happen. But yeah, like after Corona, it was like, well, I already had plans to try and do some kind of meetups, which got killed by Corona. So then I was like, I really miss those warehouse days, those party days. So yeah, the first camp that I did was me saying on Twitter, hey, like, does anyone want to have a party and book an Airbnb? And so many people said yes. I was like, well, okay. I have to do this now. And then I challenged them to send me money because I was like, that's what really separates the wheat from the chaff. And like literally everyone sent a deposit. And I was like, oh no, okay. Got to do it now. Yeah. And so a party is a party, which is great. And it seems to really benefit those there. Like it's a very high leverage activity. So it's minimal effort. In terms of like pain, and maximal like people's lives are impacted. So I like it's a kind of an EA thing actually, where it's like it's high value, like relatively low cost compared to the value. So that's why I carry on doing it.
Right. Carly, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm relatively new to TPOT, I guess. I think I made my current Twitter account September 2022, and didn't really get posting up until right before VibeCamp 2, but I got the impression that like these people are very much my people. VibeCamp 2 was incredible. I really like the TPOT people who are around in Sydney as well. And I thought, well, I want more of this where I am. And so I floated the idea to my friends, the people around me, Collie Camp, maybe we'll see. And then they like very suddenly memed it into existence. So I'm like, I guess I'm doing this now. Cool. Yeah. That's pretty much it. Like, I just want the scene in Australia, New Zealand, that general area to be a bit more integrated, be a bit more expanded. I just want more cool people around me and for all the cool people I know to like interact more.
Yes. I evacuated myself from New Zealand in part due to a lack of finding the people that I wanted to be, like intellectually and emotionally stimulated by. And so it's so exciting now seeing that there's this like Australia, New Zealand side of the movement happening. I'm like, oh, I can go home one day and I'm not gonna be the only weird kid in the village. Like there's a bunch of us.
Yeah, although I do notice a trend of everybody else in New Zealand doing the same thing. So
mm, mm,
yeah.
yeah. It's part of our national heritage. As for me, I want to kind of do a quick definition of terms. If I'm getting this right, Collie, you've done one Collie Camp. Jess, you've done Jess Camp 1, 2, and 3. Brooke, you've done Vibe Camp 1, 2, and 3, and Vibe Clips. Is that the main events that we're going to be talking about, I think? And then I've done Rich Fest 1 and Rich Fest 2, which were both like small 20-person 4-day gatherings. So the motivation for me doing Rich Fest, I think like deep down, there's some, I don't know if everyone experiences this, but I think a lot of people have an experience sometimes where it feels as if I'm an orphan. It feels as if no one cares for me or like that I'm up against the world by myself. And when I touch into that feeling, it's like so overwhelming and makes life just like really scary and hopeless. And then there's these other times where I'm like, I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm beaming. I'm connected. I've got all these awesome people with me. We're doing it together. We are going to make it. There's and that the dynamic range between those two states is like really intense. And I, because of my own experience with those states, am like very motivated to try and show the people who feel like orphans that there's actually a welcoming home in the world for them, and not that it's going to be my home or your home, or like, but that homes exist, that welcome exists, that hospitality exists, that you're like belonging is something that you can experience, and that it's available to everyone, and it's sometimes painful to navigate, but it's worth kind of holding that dream, and like we're gonna try and run experiments and like give you invitations and make it more possible that you might find your place of belonging. I think that that's like a really core driver for me. And because it is such an intense psychological thing, I don't always show up to the task sober, like sometimes I'm like, this means so much to me, I really don't. So I can be a bit like uptight, or I can get attached to how it's supposed to go and things like that. So this is the dark side, I guess, of the motivation. But so the second question to go around is like, given these lovely motivations about finding the others and connecting and having an intellectual curiosity and stimulation, and having this sense of being in the right place with the right people, how are your events doing at that? Like, how do you rate it? Like, how do you evaluate yourself? Is it good? Is it working? Like, what's not working? What's hard? I just sort of wanted to do a bit of a pulse check of like, are we each of us doing the thing that we meant to do, and like, what's hard about it?
I guess I can go first again. I have gotten some feedback that there has not been as much like intellectual content at vibe camps that as people would like. So since I kind of like called that out in my initial answer, I would like to say that. But I think that whenever you get really smart people in a room, they have really interesting conversations, and so that's what I care about. And I do think that there's a strong sense among many people who go to vibe camps that they have found their people. I've heard that from a number of people, or people who have started developing social lives, making friends off the internet, bringing those in the real world. So I think Vibe Camp has been doing well in that.
And what's not going so well?
So we are still sort of navigating the tension between this is an event for people who already know each other online to spend time together, and versus this is a place for people who might want to meet these people, or heard about it from a friend or whatever. So there's some amount of that. I think that was lessened this year, but this year was the big vibe camp was around 400 people, and then last year was around 700 people. So this one was much smaller. It was there was a lot less hype about it. So it was really kind of the people who really wanted to be there, and you could feel that difference. So we'll see if we have another big year next year. We'll see if those dynamics come back into play. And then there's like lots of just like really basic logistic things that we're still sort of like one by one each event improving on. And yeah, I think that's the main things that I want to say right now. I might have more later if we come back to it.
I wonder, so we don't keep going round and round in a circle and I get dizzy. Carly, I want to talk to you, and I'm wondering first about your experience as a newcomer, speaking to like Brooks is describing this tension between, oh, it's an event for people who already know each other, versus, well, you've only arrived recently and you went to Vibe Camp, and what is it like coming in? And yeah, what was your experience of that?
Yeah. I don't know if my experience is easily generalizable, but I felt coming into Vibe Camp to be like, I felt like I was in my element. I felt very, very welcomed, especially during the pre-parties in Philadelphia. Yeah, I felt like I could just like walk from one side of Vibe Camp to the other and have like 10 conversations with people I hadn't met before. Like hearing their fascinating life stories. So yeah, I found Vibe Camp to be a very welcoming place, but I think, I mean, you have your Lima discourse and whatever. I think I was probably better resourced than some newcomers in some ways, perhaps. And I did know people going to the camp before I went as well. Not too many, but yeah.
Before I forget, I just also wanted to like major shout out to you, like being someone, new to the scene, and then just like, I'm gonna run an event. Sure, why not? Like, that's incredible. I love that energy. Just, I wanted to make sure I said that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Yeah. World champion #1 teapotter. And then what about the flip side, Collie, as an organizer? Yeah, what was good, what was bad?
What was good, what was bad? So like the whole process of setting things up was a lot easier than I thought. But once things started ramping up like a few days before and during, it was very stressful. And it didn't help that I'd also been to Vibe Hall like 2 weeks before and had not really caught up on sleep. But yeah, in terms of like getting like the newcomers to mesh with the old guard, I suppose. I mean, it was the first collie camp, but like plenty of people already knew each other. I think it was very successful in getting everybody to feel welcome and part of the community, and I think part of that is that whatever magic I did to like market the camp seemed to target the right people. I don't know how well the strategy will work into the future, but we'll see. Yeah. I guess one thing I wish I was able to do more is it feels like Australian teapot is divided into two clusters right now. And you've got the cluster that came from like irrationality, effective altruism kind of lineage and like have become a bit more post-ready. And you've also got the people who are like more tech people, crypto people, startup people that have formed another cluster. And there was some mixing at Collie Camp, but I think that second cluster is something that I'm like relatively new to. And there weren't like too many people from that cluster joining in, but I think next year we'll have a much bigger attendance from that group.
Did you feel that as like a problem that there were these different clusters?
I was a bit surprised when I realized it originally.
Yeah.
I think it's a problem. Just like an interesting thing to notice, and like I think there's value in like having more integration between those clusters. Yeah.
What about you, Jess?
Yeah, we actually had the feedback for the first time that there wasn't enough for newcomers to like integrate themselves, which kind of surprised me because while I was at Jess Camp, it seemed like everyone was having a really wonderful time. I didn't even have to remind my volunteers to let people have their bad emotions instead of trying to fix their bad emotions. Like I didn't really see much of that at all. But it made me be like, right, like it's been long enough and we've got here where like the newbies are complaining that the not newbies went to camp last year and made friends. So I think that's a sign of success, right? Like there's been, it really feels like there's this like this little, I keep calling us the mycelial layer, like I keep calling the group of us that's on Twitter. We're not quite bottom layer, like bacteria. Like, I think that's like 4chan. But we're like the mycelium that sort of like uses all the stuff from the bottom, but also pokes through the top and like spreads and is networked together and things. And I think this metaphor goes well in many different ways, like in different parts of the community. So that the people that said that there wasn't enough for newbies, I said, well, did you go to the opening ceremony? Did you go to the speed friending? Did you cook with your cabin? And they were like, no. And I was like, well, skill issue. because there was plenty of structure at Just Camp. I mean, and we had wall-to-wall workshops, like 4 or 5 workshops going on at any time from like 9 a.m. till 2 a.m. Lots and lots of like structure to just join a thing where you're doing an activity that's being led. And like I paid for some facilitators to come in and do specific workshops that I thought would be valuable, but they're like skilled workshops. So yeah, I mean, I think it was more or less just like, oh, you know, other people here knew each other and I had shadow around that. But that's a good thing, because that means that there's been enough events in Europe, there's enough friends being made that like everyone is it's becoming like the summer camp is like Christmas, where it's like, oh, hi, like you're seeing the family that you only see once a year, and some of them you've seen a lot and some of them you haven't. And yeah, so next year's Just Camp, I was thinking about whether, like previously I've actually stopped people from coming that aren't on Twitter. I've told them, look, you won't fit in, you won't understand the acronyms, you haven't done the reading, like you're not going to enjoy yourself. Because we're all talking in code, because we've been online for like so long, and 2 years entirely online and during Corona. So I've been saying, like, do you want to come to a social environment that's like that? And like 1 or 2 people have, which is awesome, and they've joined Twitter like to come to the event, and everyone else has been like, oh no, thank you so much for telling me that that's what it is, I'm definitely not going to come to that. So for next year, I'm considering changing that policy and trying to consciously get people to invite their friend who would be amazing. It's just that they're not on Twitter, but they do like all the same things, or they, you know, they can vibe or whatever else. So it feels like we're actually at a bit of a turning point. I don't know if you agree, Brooke, as well. And like my experience of this year's vibe camp, I mean, last year I loved it, and this year I was just in heaven. So I really love going to not my camp because I can hang out with people so much more.
Yeah.
And that's why I say like other organizers can come to mine. Like I think that we should just go to each other's for free, just so that we can experience a camp without having to run a camp. So it was wonderful to be able to do that. And I've been to a few others in Europe too. So yeah, it feels like there's this like the past exists, you know, and the previous camps are creating a thing. And so there is this question of, you're new, and I will have more onboarding for new people, like very consciously. I'm always inspired by a conference I used to go to called BICON, and they did a lot for newbies, because there's always like 1/3 of the people were always new, and they were always desperately upset, like for most of the week, or like the first night is terrible for them. And then, you know, you go to some of these newbie workshops, so you feel a bit better, and you know, by the next couple of nights they're okay. But like without all of that structure, they would actually like really be struggling. So I will copy that thing where you put like for newbies specifically stuff in the programming, so that you can so that we can integrate the newer ones with the old hats.
I want to say, like, when I saw the first Just Camp, the description of it, like, hey, who wants to join this Airbnb? I was like, no fucking way. Like, what? A bunch of internet people are gonna go to an Airbnb? What? Like, I found it really intimidating. And then something happened, you know, in the intervening period. I think you actually just were the first person on Twitter that I had a Zoom call with, where they actually got to have some face and like,
No.
yeah, you sort of catalyzed this process that happened for me over the course of a few months of like reinterpreting my experience on Twitter. At first, I thought this is like TV, but it's interactive. Like all the characters, you can talk to them and they talk back sometimes, but they're not real people. And then meeting you and other people is like, wait a second, like these are people. So Just Camp 1 was intimidating, so I didn't go. And then by the time Just Camp 2 came around, you invited me as a fellow organizer, and you made it really clear to me, like, you are here to have a good time. Don't lift a finger. Everyone else is going to cook. You're not cooking, which was like such a rare thing, because I spend so much time organizing events that getting that permission to just be like, no, I'm just going to go on maximum chill. I still contributed in ways, but like I had the sense of responsibility lifted off me. Was like such a solid move, and contributed to me having like such a blissful experience at Just Camp 2. Like I was in heaven as well. And it was so motivating to drop into my first Twitter gathering and just be like, holy moly, I'm surrounded by, like Collie described, like surrounded by people that I feel that I can have conversations with because we have shared context. Like we actually have been talking to each other. You know, that blog post that you wrote 3 years ago, I read that and it meant something to me, you know, like that didn't just go into the void, that went into me, you know, and like let's keep the conversation going. Like that was very stimulating for me, and that motivated me to like, okay, I'm going to run some camps on my own. My reflection on my own events was like pretty good. Pretty good, not great, you know, or sort of like they had great moments, or like there were definitely some peak experiences that people had great times, but it didn't feel like when I evaluate different events that I've run over my career of organizing, it definitely wasn't like the top best things I've ever done. And I think it was basically about this sort of theme that's emerging between us of like, what do you do with newcomers? And I was setting a standard for myself of like everyone feels included by the end. And I've done that with other events. You know, I've done that with 100-person events and achieved it with a degree of structure, which is kind of what you're pointing at, Jess. And it's just that I know some techniques to make that happen, but I don't necessarily know if those are the right techniques to deploy in this context with these people. You know, I feel like people are they have a lower appetite for structure than other groups that I've worked with. You know, it's sort of like, so I set myself this unrealistic standard and then feel bad about not meeting it. So there's that thing. But like I guess I had this unexpressed expectation, and you know, expectation is the precursor to disappointment. Um, this expectation that everyone is like me in the sense that they just have like an near infinite capacity for the most weird, divergent, untranslatable, peculiar people, and they'll just be excited to meet, like, wow, you're such a strange flavor. That's fascinating. But actually, a lot of people, when they meet a very, very, very unusual person, they're like, oh, I don't know if I really want to hang out with you, you know, which is like quite reasonable and normal. But I sort of expected that everyone was going to be on this like infinite openness game, and then had this shocking but obvious realization that no, some people come to hang out with their friends. Some people come to relax. Some people, you know, like they're not on some, this is what I meant at the start about my deep psychological issues around being an orphan. I'm not an orphan. I've got a lovely large family, but feeling like an orphan sometimes, that I'm like, oh, I've got to patch up anyone's bad emotions that you're describing, Jess. Like, and I still like when I think about organizing events in the future, that's the big hang up I have, is like, how open to be with the invitation, how many newcomers to invite. Like it's really easy to just run a private invite only thing and have 30 awesome people there, but that kind of like closes the door on inviting all these new people we haven't discovered yet. And yeah, I get a bit stressed, you know, like I'm doing it with my body language, like how to incorporate people, how to invite the right people in, and then how to incorporate them in a way that is graceful and doesn't feel overbearing, and like it's not cringe, you know, or it's like cringe in a generative way. Yeah.
I feel like with smaller events, the dynamics between individual people matter a lot more, and like which specific people you have matters a lot more. Like there are other things that are harder about running, I would assume, about running an event the size of Vibe Camp, but I think that's one thing that is actually easier because you just have such a wide mix of people that it's one person isn't going to really make or break the event, and you can kind of have your little pockets that you float around to, and hopefully find people that you mix well with.
Yeah, I think that's why I want Chess Camp to be bigger as well. Yeah, bigger is better. Like the first one was kind of just a party, but yeah, that diluting effect is good. And I don't know, somehow maybe Brooke and I just we're not scared of the rando. It's just like, we are fully open. But I think, I don't know, sort of if you feel this, Brooke, but I feel like I can handle it. Like whatever happens, because I personally can probably handle the weirdest person in the room, at least for a while. So, and you know, infrastructure wise, they can just do things, like they can be busy. But I agree, like the bigger the better in for that particular problem, I would say. Yeah.
Something I saw, I think at Just Camp 3 was, yes, there were loads of workshops and opportunities for people to sort of like structured participation where it's kind of easy to find your way in. And I feel like some of the newbies were they could sense like, but all of the old hands, all of the friends who know each other, they're hanging out on the grass. They're not in these workshops. And I want to be part of that group. And I can't get there by being in the workshop. And like, my personal take on that is like, I mean, you go to the workshop, you meet new friends. You don't need to
Yeah.
meet the people who already have friends. You just need to meet friends.
Yeah, they're
But I
wrong.
do. This is the thing, is like how much of this feeling of isolation is just a skill issue, and you can change your mindset and have some different strategies, and like you'll just have a good time. And how much of it is like a host responsibility, where we set things up in a way that like people are likely to feel integrated by the end of it.
I wanted to say something about camp size. So
Mm.
Collie Camp was 44 people. And even that size was enough to make people retreat into their shell for the first day or so. So like and these are people as well that did already know people at the camp. It's just like too many new people for them. So I do kind of worry about like how do we get newbies comfortable in that kind of environment. I think in the case of Collie Camp, we had a lot of like circling type events that help people relax a bit more. And B, I think the structure we had was like an unconference style. You know, the first morning we got everyone together to like talk about what they might want to see, what they might want to run, and it allowed newbies that felt like they had something to provide that, or commit to providing that, and yeah, gave them space for that. Yeah, but I can still see like, that I don't think that particular process scales. Yeah, I'm curious, like, do you think this goes away with size as well? Like, actually, this isn't a size problem, and like you tend to find a niche, or is there something I should be doing here?
I'm of the view that people just have to go through it. I definitely
okay.
saw it with the warehouse parties that I was running. There was over 100 people every time. And you try and warn people and tell them like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And like, they don't believe you. And then it all happens as you said it would. And yeah, but what would happen is that, you know, they'd have high expectations, like far too high, because we were known to have a playroom. So they would hope that they met someone and then took them to the playroom and then had successful sex in front of loads of other people. And I was like, I kept saying to them, that's not going to happen. That's completely ridiculous. But they didn't believe me. But yeah, after they had come like 5 times, then they're relaxed. They've seen the space. They know what it's like. They know how to take care of themselves. They know that they should eat. They know that they should not get too drunk, for example. Like people tend to like just add more and more stimulation into an already high stim environment. And more or less like providing structure for people to not feel that way is almost just a way to be like, hey, look, it was your skill issue. Like the workshops are there, you can't blame me, but that's yeah. For a lot of people, I think they have to go through it. They're challenging themselves. They're ready to like, you know, change something about their lives. They want to do something that's out of the box for them, and it's not going to be comfortable. They're just not. So I think just having like friendly listening ears, maybe, because I know like our teams have like secret friendly people all like dotted around everywhere, and I think that's great. And yeah, having a sort of hint, it's like, oh, this is a newbie workshop. Go here if you're a newbie. Like that helps, but in another way, they just got to go through that pain to realize that they're only doing it to themselves. And that with time and maybe attitude change, but maybe on the second camp, third camp, whatever, it gets better.
Vive Camp, one thing that was very different coming out of this event for the org team, and I think for at least some amount of the attendees and volunteers, is like there is suddenly now like after VC2, it was all, how do we meet basic needs? How do we make sure there's enough water? How do we, you know, like let's figure out how to put on like a solid event, fix all these problems. There were a lot of problems. And then this one, the whole tenor of our conversations afterward, it has been different. There's much more of just an assumption that vibe camp will continue happening every year. And there's much more talk about like what cool things can we do. And there's a lot more interest in people in helping kind of like make those happen throughout the year. We have just a little bit of background on where our org structure is at right now. We've got 6 people who are part like co-owners, whatever, of the LLC. We've got Dread Canary is our well, he's called the aide to vibe camp. He's one of 3 people on payroll. None of us are getting paid very much right now, which is why I have not been to chess camp, because the flights are a lot. But then we also have this role that we were calling community contributor or community collab. Oh my gosh, what something we've got like another role, and that is we've got people who like Emily by night is working on our merch store. Matthias is stepping up to what he wants to be our event coordinator liaison. I don't know if that's what he's going to call the role, but just a dedicated person to help people who want to build art installations or host projects, things like that. Just have someone to talk to. We've got Brundorf is doing, he's building our tech stack. I really wanted to give everyone a shout out, but I'm forgetting some names. Ship is working on badges, Surrealist Ship. Oh gosh, it's gonna be so bad if I forget. Yassine is doing AV stuff. MDC is going to help. There's just so many people that have just been like, we love this thing, and like, and it just feels totally different. So anyway, I brought that up because there are now people who are thinking about like, how can we structure this differently? Should we add another day? Should we have like whole camp-wide activities? Should we have like the first day be a certain kind of content? Because we're not really, we've kind of stumbled into this. We're still figuring out what works, and we're very open to experimentation. And I'm so excited that we're at a place now where people from the community are stepping up and being like, I think we should try this, and just taking ownership of it and coming up with suggestions. And it's amazing. And I love it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I had one idea. I don't know if it's good, but I just want to name it so I don't forget, which is maybe it's worth paying a couple of the micro celebrities, the people that everyone knows, to run some of the newbie workshops. And that kind of not just like has a newbie workshop, but it's like, and you'll get connected to someone who's very well connected. And so like then they can just help you find your way after that. Whereas if it's like all newbies just meeting newbies, you kind of you still don't cross that barrier into feeling connected. That's just an idea. I am keen to like shift gears in the conversation unless there's anything like burning, but I want to think about the bigger scene that we're part of. And obviously each of us only has our like limited agency, and we're taking responsibility for a small piece of the puzzle. And it's like we organize parties, and some of the like this posts on Twitter that someone will put up and it will get viewed like 10 million times by 10 million different people. Like the impact of the scene is like enormous in some ways and by some measures, and each of us have just got this like tiny little sliver of influence over what's happening. But I'm sure that you are each in your own way a little bit like me, that you do have some kind of gesture towards the scene. You have some sense that like, yeah, I'm doing this event, but it's part of something larger than this event. And you have some kind of desire or wish about where we might be going as a more broad movement. And I'm just curious, like, either, I don't know which way to take the question. It's either where do you think we are going, or where would you like us to be going? Like if you were the Empress of Teapot, what would your decrees be? Whichever one of those questions feels more alive. And Jess, your smile makes you the first person to respond.
Yeah. In the grandest way, I feel like we are literally rebuilding Western culture. From the ground. Yeah. That like, yeah, I can't be more grand than that. And I think that it's, it started from How to Live a Good Life. And because a lot of us have been like, we all appreciate civilization. We like plumbing and dentistry and trains that run on time. But what have we thrown out as a result of our civilization? Because we're all, I don't know, I feel like a lot of us in the scene grew up suffering in some way. Even though all of the normal civilizational benefits were available to us in every way. So like even the poorest of us had clean food and water and all of that stuff. And yet here we are miserable. So that very honest exploration has led to this huge friend group and art scene. I like to call it an art scene. I think that explains it more, is that Twitter is like a writer's room, which is what shitposting is. You're like testing out material, right? And a lot of it falls flat, but some of it like flies, and you wouldn't get the viral posts without all of the shit. Which is again why I call us like mycelium, because we're in the soil. So yeah, I think, but the second that you know that you're doing that, or try to shape it, or try to push it in a certain direction, or try to control it, I think it will just die on the vine, basically. So we have to remain like wisely naive to what's going on. And the meeting in real life, I think, might be like this like interim step. I don't know. Like I think there's a sense in which our culture is dead and the new culture needs to be born, and no one knows how to birth it. And I think that possibly we're trying to help birth it without having a full like fall of the Roman Empire, or like go to full Dark Ages first. So it's a tricky thing to pull off. Is like we kind of want to keep the highest of the highs of the tech that we have, but we also want to be back on the land and growing our own vegetables and like having a village to raise our children and stuff. And this tension is huge. But I think that we're like doing that really well, as in it's a good start, and I don't see anyone else doing it, so that's fun. And yeah, I think we're basically coming of age, and like I'm probably one of the older. I think we are like more older generally, or like the ones that have more life experience are just more better placed to do stuff. Not that the young ones can't, it's just that 16 extra years of life gives you a place to stand from, which is a different place to when you're like 25. Yeah, so yeah, we're literally changing the world. Turns out you can do that. Oh my God. But don't
So
say
golden,
it too loud.
yeah, golden age for humanity, but we just pretend we're having a party.
Yeah.
Is that what everyone's doing?
Everyone else.
No, everyone on this call, I mean.
I mean, my only thought is like, I am looking at what's happening in America, and I'm like, how do we have more of like the cool stuff that's happening in America but having it in Australia? So in a way, I feel like we're kind of like just failing behind and like trying to maybe implement something similar to what we see, like Fractal, for example. So many people in Sydney are like, oh, we need like better share houses at least, for example, like more community co-living. So yeah, just trying to like, part of the reason I'm traveling is to take inspiration from everything else that's happening and see what will fit in our corner of the world.
I think I oscillate, I guess. Like I'm at the moment I'm in a phase where I kind of opt out of thinking about the end of the world and therefore thinking about saving the world. I've sort of like sucked the marrow out of that particular bone, and I'm just like, I've got one definition of what a good life is, and I certainly reject the idea that we're the only ones that are doing it. Like I've spent the last 2 years traveling around in the south of Europe and spending a lot of time in little villages, and there's many places in the world with abundant social fabric and a sense of joy and meaning in life, and care for each other and care for the land they're in. And that's certainly not the majority case of like where it seems like the trajectory of civilization is going. And I don't kind of care that much about what civilization is up to. It's not my responsibility. I just want to, I've repeatedly kind of navigated my way into very nourishing communities of belonging, and I know how much of a difference it makes to my quality of life and how much I'm able to be of service to others. And I want that to be kind of common and easily available to anyone who wants it. I think that's kind of thing that like if you have a sense that the sort of majority culture on offer doesn't fit you, and that is a different way of living and you just don't know exactly what it is, like that there's a place to take that impulse and that it'll be welcomed with enthusiasm and like, yeah, we're figuring it out and it's really fun and it's hard, but it's mostly fun and there's a place for you, you know, we're kind of waiting. I think that's what I'm up to. And if that looks like, yeah, I'm not interested in growing vegetables, by the way. I'm glad other people grow vegetables for me. I don't want to start a commune, but I do want to live in a neighborhood where I can walk around and have loads of cool people around. And like I said, there's loads of villages around Europe where that's happening, but I'm not invited. Back home in New Zealand, I'm invited there. I could go back and do that, but I like being more in the center of the Western Hemisphere where I'm not so alienated by time zone. I'm really curious about how do you take atomized people and turn them into the kind of building blocks that make awesome neighborhoods. And I think that's the motivation that I have for this whole thing. And yeah, like I say, it doesn't have to transform civilization, but would be pretty rad if it did, you know, it would be a nice sweetener.
I think it does, because civilization, like housing, land use, food, like goods, like it's all connected. Like, but anyway, I'll let Brooke go first.
I think my answer is probably somewhere between Jess and Rich's. I think that the reason why I've been somewhat involved to a degree in the network state ecosystem and network societies. Got to plug my event. We're running one in October called the Network Society Camp. It's going to be a mix of vibe camp and a little bit more structured. But I've been to a few pop-up cities, and the reason why I got involved in that was because before Balaji came out with that book, I remember looking around and being like, whoa, and this was years ago. This was, I don't know, 2021 or 22. I was like, wow, there's like things happening in this city and that city. And these people are like, they're, you know, there's going between group houses and they're sharing knowledge and they're sharing skills and they're doing all these things. And I think those hubs are going to get bigger and more connected. There's going to be more hubs, you know, maybe like in Australia. And so it just intuitively, some things about the way Balaji describes the network state concept really resonated with me. I think that TPOT in my mind is one of a very small number of like actually viable things that you could potentially call like a proto network society. Or maybe a network society, since if you take out the word states, then you don't need sovereignty, and it's a different thing. So I think that's really cool, and I think that we've probably barely begun to scratch the surface of the way that tech and the internet can be used to enhance our lives. And I think it's gonna probably could look a lot like this, like people finding their kind of tribe, and then that tribe kind of mixes with this tribe. As people talk about the meta tribe a lot as sort of an alternative to TPOT, although maybe it's something a little bit different, because who knows, these terms are all very vague and fuzzy. And then I also think that and I was thinking about this earlier when we were talking about how like welcoming newcomers and things like that. What the really cool thing about Twitter is that there's almost like this immune response that happens when things go poorly or they go well. People talk about it, and it can be annoying sometimes. But I think that reduces some of the workload off of the organizers to fix problems, because there's people kind of just like talk about it and figure it out, and then they can communicate it to new people. But that also sort of happens within our own lives. So I feel like I've seen, I've been on Twitter hanging out in this whatever for maybe 4 years now. And just one by one, you kind of see every once in a while somebody who is really struggling, really having a hard time, all of a sudden figure their shit out. And they find a job that works well with their life. They figure out like, oh, I should be taking walks. This is actually great. And I think, when you figure out your stuff and you're talking about the whole process, somebody else might be like, oh, well, maybe I'll try that thing. And it's just that little tiny, like one person, then another person. And I think that's that could make it could have a massive effect on the world over time. And if not, it has a massive effect on individual people's lives. And that's really important. And that was all somewhat rambly, but I'm gonna stop there for a moment.
That's why they pay you the big bucks, Brooke, is to come and ramble at us. The big bucks, I'm sure, are on their way. So as we're talking about tribes and villages and things, I'm like, we've got peculiar demographics for a village, both in terms of gender and age, and yeah, like where are we at in terms of like including families, for example, or including elderly people, or like what sort of state do you think we are in? How many people are getting married and making babies?
I
You
think
don't have to
Vibe
get
Camp.
married to make a baby, obviously.
I think Vibe Camp is at 2 or 3, two for sure that I can think of off the top of my head, marriages. But Vibe Clips was really special. We had, I mean, I felt nice about it. We had 14 kids, and that's all thanks to Dancing Horse, who has been putting a ton of work into helping families and like figuring out how to help families feel welcome and so they can actually participate in the event while they're there with their children. We had like 14 kids, and I think the oldest person was in her 70s. So we just had, and the youngest person was, I don't know, a few months or something. So that was that was a phenomenal age range. It's something that we think about a lot and we talk about a lot, and we're still kind of figuring out how to be more inclusive. We've always kind of tried to be open to people who aren't on Twitter, and we're sort of trying to figure out how to make that easier for people over time. So I think that's also another barrier to entry. I think Twitter is not as intuitive for people who are older. But I think that's probably like if I think a lot about trying to do some kind of pop-up city thing, and I'm not ready to do that. So that would be like a month or two long event with different structure. And if I were to do something like that, I would think a lot more about integrating families, because I think that's closer to the village sort of end state, whatever.
Jess, do you have thoughts about this with Jess Camp?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a single child at this one because it was term time, and we had like one child last year because it wasn't term time. But I think it's always important to with your event is just say like, is the community that I'm drawing from all reflected here? Like one child is a reasonable reflection of the European community. And it was the same when I was at Less Wrong. Like I would be like, why are there no women? And they were like, well, what's a reasonable measure? And so like there's only 1 in 10 readers of Less Wrong are women, so there was 1 in 10 women in the room because it was me. So I think it's okay that our like dynamics are as they are, because that's how it's happened on Twitter when we don't know each other's age or race or marital status, and this is what's occurred. Weirdly enough, I always have in the back of my mind Tibet, who arguably like managed to codify enlightenment, and the better they got enlightenment, the lower their birth rate was. So their birth rate has gone all the way down, or before they were invaded, their birth rate went all the way down to like 0.2 children per couple or something. Yeah, so I think the world is currently experiencing lower birth rates, and like the ones that are higher will eventually become lower, right? And everyone sees this as a bad problem, but it's only a bad problem because we built all of our systems on top of this assumption of infinite growth of both humans and resources. And so lower birth rates cause challenges, but that doesn't mean that that's not what's happening. And like I think that if the planet has reached some sort of like, it's like maximum number of years lived, but minimum desire to reproduce, like that needs to be self-correcting, or that is self-correcting. So I do want people to get together and have babies, but the ones that would have anyway, if that makes sense. And I do want to facilitate that they should be here. But honestly, I am normally in a space where everyone is constantly like prioritizing the baby over something else. So like, I'm always in spaces where it's like, when are you getting married? When are you having a child? Oh, how does it feel to not have a child at your age? And I'm like, well, why are you asking me that question in that way? Like, it should be normal to not as well. So I do want to help, but our dynamic is what the world is going to face. Like, not enough children, too many old people, or like too many. We're like 40 or something, but adults having to learn how to live with adults. Yeah, I think that we're so far behind on emotional skills. We've just got the Second World War generation who raised our parents and then us really badly. And it's probably right that we shouldn't have that many kids. That's fine. That's where we are. That's who we are. I will keep an eye on it, but I'm also kind of fine with it. and what children there are will get like so much like love and like hopefully like adults that can actually be useful people in their lives. And so I don't know about you guys, but I feel so protective and like energized by the people who are like 25 and below. Like, you know, we need to look after the Zoomers, and we need to somehow model being real adults that can actually show up in the world and make it a good world. And yeah, we might have to start literally like offing the boomers so that we can actually be in charge. But no, sorry, that's a joke.
It's a joke. We're just joking around.
I am joking. Yes, so it's going to be a weird ass village. We're a weird ass people, so we're going to have a weird ass village, and that's all right.
A couple, I'm avoiding 16,000 rabbit holes, and and a couple of replies to that is one, what you just said about your sense of responsibility to the like 25s and under. It just clicked something for me of like, my wife and I don't plan to have kids, and definitely some of my like paternal instinct is being moved over to like, there's all these people that need love and care and like someone to be an adult around, you know? And that doesn't mean they need parenting, but like being a I don't know, open-hearted and weird and curious uncle, like that's nice. Like it's cool to find that there's a role for me to play there. But I hadn't fully like connected that before. And the other thought is just like, well, if the strategy is this golden age for humanity and like transformation of civilization, that's sort of implies it involves a lot of people. And traditionally, the way you get a lot of people is you reproduce. But if that's not happening a lot, I mean, it could be that this is an advanced party, and it's like, yeah, what we've got is all these people that have low responsibilities and high earning potential, and they're kind of like the settlers that are going out to this new land, and they're going to get things going, and then they're going to be like, I would like to breed now, please, and they can recruit the others. Could be happening. I saw that happen in other communities, pretty much like that. It's good, it's nice, good. But the other option is it's not a breeding strategy, it's a recruiting strategy. And that would imply this thing that has come up a few times about inviting people that are not on Twitter, you know, like, and it kind of extending out, making it more accessible to people that have less shared pre-existing context. Or maybe we're not transforming the world and we're just having a nice time with our friends.
Hey. Yeah, I'm pretty big on degrowth. I'm huge on degrowth. No one else is. I don't know why.
Massive.
Well, everyone's like, oh, there's scarce land, there's scarce resources. It's like, not if there's less people. This is a good thing. Like, this solves climate change. Like, I really don't understand why everyone's
it's the nicest possible way to have less people.
Yeah, it's the only way to have less people.
Well, the other
okay. My take on this is that I think people who are in TPOT are more likely to get to the point where they're able to raise children that are likely to like be a very significant net positive on the world. So I mean, in general, I'm a little bit skeptical for degrowth, but in particular, I'm skeptical of like degrowth within TPOT. Nonetheless, I don't have particularly nuanced opinions about this, and I am mainly hanging out with my friends. But I think my take on the state of families in the Australian part of TPOT, there are some people in Australian TPOT that already have families, but I think the demographics that we're looking at is like, you know, usually like 20, early to mid 20s to like mid 30s is where the peak demographic is. And I think not many of those people have had children yet, and they will. And so Australian TPOT will eventually see more families, I'd say, just because people are getting older.
I jumped in there real quick because I've just been so thrilled that the Dancing Horse is doing all this for us. But I just want to also say this is also a size thing. When your event gets to the size 5 campus, you're just going to have a wider range of people coming.
Yeah. Yeah, we had the same thing with Inspiral, where I did a lot of my community organizing, and it's like when there's 200 or 300 people involved, like a bunch of them have kids, and then the question is like, how do we make it a really great experience for them so that their friends who have kids also want to come? But when there's like one kid, it's like probably not going to be a great experience, regardless of what you do. You know, like it's just, yeah, a numbers game.
Yeah, I spoke with Stephen Fan when he did Pacific Northwest, and he's just had a child. And so I said to him, like, how do you want that event to be? And like, how do you want to have your child in the event? And he suddenly was like, oh yeah, I know exactly how I want it to be. And so was able to like run it such that the children were involved, and you know, you can front and center them, because sometimes kids want attention. So you can be like, right, it's child workshop, we're just going to watch the children or whatever. Like you can very much, they can be the most important members. I also had long discussions with a couple of people from European TPOT. So Made in Cosmos was there, and Tim Tarr, who has a child, was there. So it's easy enough, I think, to actually skill up on what is needed. And so you just need to not do the invisible barriers. So you need to not do it during term time, or not do it in a place that's like has inconsistent food, so you don't know how you're going to feed your child or something like that. So it's definitely possible and definitely there. And we've got like, I feel like Lisa's child is the most famous teapot child. What's her username? Well, anyway, there was an amazing scissor statement poll thing, the red pill, blue pill thing that was made up by her child.
Lisa Tomic.
Lisa
Lisa
Tomic,
Tomic, yeah. So some of the biggest celebrities in our part of Twitter are not on Twitter, but they have contributed some of the best discourse.
yeah, yeah.
So the kids are all right.
I mean, that definitely in the lifespan of the Inspiral community, when we hit a point that, yeah, it started out with all these young programmers who had high earning potential and no responsibilities. And then over time they were like, huh, I would like to find a partner, you know? And so then like the demographic shifted. And then they started like pairing off and buying houses and making babies and things. And now like at maybe not now, but like maybe 8 years in or 9 years into the process, like you do cross this kind of threshold where it's not just like, oh, we're having this hilarious baby workshop, and everyone's copying the babies and that's fun, and we're like, hey, that's nice. It's like you're in a circling experience or some kind of like deep, intimate process, and there's like a 14-year-old who is like on the cusp of becoming an adult, and they're seeing other adults in their fullness, which they never had a chance to see before and would not have likely experienced anywhere else, and actually see what it's like to be a person as a grown-up and without the guards up. Is just like that's the good that's the good stuff. It's really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
That's the golden age. I want another question. I think it's like, assuming that we are going to keep doing everything that we've done so far, but that our ambitions are larger than just doing events, what would be the next natural step, whether it's us doing them or that we would wish our neighbors would initiate?
I think I've already touched on mine. Just pirates. Wait, just pirates?
Obviously.
Briefly, so people joke about blimps. I think they made a joke about that, but I have a friend who's on Twitter, sort of, it isn't Teapot, but like is around. He was gonna learn to be a pirate, as he said, but basically infrastructure, travel infrastructure is the thing. So he's just finished pirate school. It's not pirate school, it's being a first mate of tall ships, which can have like 25 people or many tons of cargo. They can go across the Atlantic, but they're made of wood, these ships. Anyway, so I'm literally building sort of an empire just in my brain, but connecting Lisbon to Wales, to the Azores Islands, which are Portuguese owned in the middle of the Atlantic, to Bermuda, which is an ex-British colony near America, to the States, to the Caribbean, and so there's this whole arc where you go in the summer, in the spring, you can go towards the States, and in the winter, you can come back to the UK. And so like we can basically have our own mail, we can stop flying, we can have events that are literally on the boat because it takes just over a week to get to Pico and it takes another 2 weeks to get to Bermuda. Like, yeah, co-working on the boat, and just have like these nodes that are connected via our own infrastructure. And yeah, people joked about blimps, but you can only actually have 5 people on a blimp maximum. I actually looked into it. You can buy them on eBay. But ships is very doable, especially if they go on just on sails as well as engines. And yeah, if the worst happens, if climate change occurs, like if you live on an island in the middle of the Atlantic and only the people who know how to sail ships can get there, and it has fresh water and stuff, like it's a very cool place and defensible place to survive. So yeah, and so there is one pirate like that I always help because we need him, and his dreams of connecting Lisbon to the Azores with his own boat, I think is fantastic, and it stops the location problem. So I want to live in Wales partly because it has coastline where you can land the boat. So like Wales and Pico are more connected than London and Lisbon if you can't fly, but you can sail. So yeah.
Other takers, next natural step.
The
Mother,
next
you were
natural
about to say
step,
something.
yeah, I mean, I've already touched on like community co-living and like a third space, both things that various hubs in America have already like started doing. So like the Commons in SF and Fractal in New York. Being able to do those things in Sydney would be amazing. I think there's like some appetite for that sort of thing, especially a lot of what my co-organizer for Collie Camp, Elliot, talks about, like buying an apartment building, buying an event space. So we'll see. But on the topic of travel, I kind of want TPOT to just like start an aerospace company to like bring back supersonic jets so that I can get from Sydney to San Francisco in like 5 hours. That'd be pretty nice. Just connect the world more. It's like that's like the biggest bottleneck in my view, is just like we can't travel to each other fast enough. But a little bit ambitious perhaps. Definitely much more ambitious than sailing from Lisbon to Wales.
That's sick. Brooke?
Yeah, so I think there's this progression that happens when you start to get connected to a scene like this. You figure out like group houses, and the group houses get connected. Then you like maybe get a bunch of people in a building, or a bunch of people that live near your friends. App that I think Phil11 made is really, I haven't used it, but I think that's really cool. It's for people to, I think you get alerts if houses come up for sale or for rent near your location. So you can get, I think having people within like a 5 to 10 minute walking distance is really cool. San Francisco is Twitter in real life, especially in Hayes Valley. My friend calls it spawning. Like Twitter characters just spawn on your walks. It's really fun. And then like what's next? I think that we're moving quite clearly into a world where a lot more people have a lot more freedom. There's a lot more people who work from home, digital nomad type things. And there's a lot of people who have homes, but would be all right with traveling for a few months out of the year, maybe, especially if there's good internet. So I think there's something there. I think with the frequency of these pop-up cities, I think there's going to be, we're very close to a point already where some people will just spend their entire year going from pop-up city to pop-up city. And maybe it looks something like that. I don't really know, but I do think that this is all kind of directionally, what you guys have been saying is sort of directionally what I've been thinking too. And I've turned around other things too. I looked into like what it costs to build a cruise ship, because I was like, what if we have like a high-tech, state-of-the-art cruise ship and like go live on it in like part of the year or whatever. This quite expensive is the answer. It's also very hard for people with no background in cruise ships to break into. But maybe one day, maybe we're just not ready yet. I've also looked into, there's a property, like a retreat center up north of San Francisco that has, I think, capacity for like 100 people overnight, but it would be, really cool. And also, I'm not sure I'm ready to make that kind of commitment yet. It's also very expensive, not cruise ship expensive, but so yeah, I'm still sort of keeping my ears open, thinking about things. I was working with somebody who's trying to start a charter city, and that fell through, but that would have been really cool. One thing that's happening with Prospera is a startup city off the coast of Honduras they are working with Vitalia, which was a pop-up city, but it's now becoming a permanent settlement within the startup city. And so these charter cities, startup cities need people to come live there. That's kind of one of the things they struggle with sometimes. And events will bring people there. Pop-up cities will bring people there. So there could be something where some of us start working with people who are starting their own cities and kind of complement what they're doing. But I think there's a lot of possibilities. It'll be something. I'm just not quite sure what.
Mm.
Yeah.
Just on the cruise ships, they have a worse carbon footprint than flying because water is very hard to get through. Which is fine. You know, I don't want to harsh anyone's buzz, but that's the thing. Kali,
One other observation I wanted to make is that it seems like Teapot people are over like in different places to their usual residence enough of the time that like we could probably get by with like 75% of the usual housing it would take and just like house sit for each other. That's something that somebody brought up that yeah, so like very keen to like have more hubs where we can just like share housing a bit more, you know.
I want to give a shout out to van life, but not van life as you would have mostly seen on YouTube, but like living in a small motorhome, which is how I've been living the last year and a half with my wife. And it's a small studio apartment, you know, we've got a kitchen and a bathroom and a place to work and a bedroom, and it's a vehicle, and it costs us like 12,000 euros. And you get to just like potter around really beautiful places, and it's like a small studio apartment with the most amazing backyard. And it's for me, it's like going to gatherings with your own small house is the most amazing upgrade, because all your stuff is there, and like if you've had enough of the people, you just go back to your house and it's there. So I have a wish that there'd be more people playing that game, and that we would be able to, especially in Europe, where like I feel like in Europe the various cities are more like suburbs of each other than in other parts of the world, where cities are like they feel more remote from each other. So yeah, it's really not a big deal to drive from one city to another and like have these like little clusters. I would love it if there was people joining us. We're discovering all these amazing places and lovely people. The other more concrete next step for me is where we didn't want to be in the motorhome over winter because it's lame. And so we rented a house for 3 months, and it was big enough to have 20 people come for events and like 10, 15 people staying in between events. And that gave us a taste of like, I think this would be a good permanent fixture. So current priority is that can we find the right property and find the right funding to make that happen? And that is like it's more like nature based, so not like an urban neighborhood like some of the other things that have been talked about, but like let's have a hub that is a good place to go and spend a month, have some nature connection, do some inner work, like have these like small scale camps there, micro music festival, that kind of thing. That's sort of like I think part of the diverse tapestry of this mycelial web. The other thought that was hanging on my mind as I just went was I do want to make sure it's clear for people listening that when we're talking about, like Collie, you're mentioning Fractal and places like that, like these kind of co-living experiences, the reason I'm so excited about those is that they are organized in a sort of like exquisite balance between decentralized and coordinated, where it's like there is no supreme body governing the whole building. It just so happens that lots of people who know each other moved into the same apartment building. You know, like that to me is like so genius for minimizing the coordination overhead and dealing with conflict, and not conflict, but just like minor disagreements. It's like you have your own autonomous unit and it just happens to be physically co-located, and you don't necessarily have to grow vegetables. You don't have to take care of your own waste, or you know what I mean? Like you can just take advantage of the benefits of modern society. So I'm very bullish on that approach of like, yeah, live near your friends and just put the coordination effort in to like have a neighborhood. I've got like one last question on my mind. And I have to give a disclaimer, which is I think organizers are very precious. And obviously I'm self-interested because I think I'm great. As I hope we all do think we're great. But I do feel that organizers have like a pivotal role to play in the ecosystem, and one of the critical factors or like the failure points in scene building that I've seen is just that like the reciprocity or the feedback loops aren't quite there, and so like the organizers are constantly in a state of like giving out of their personal reserves and like kind of getting paid sometimes and finding opportunities, but the balance doesn't really add up, and so they kind of like mature out of it, and so you just keep losing this institutional wisdom and all the connections, and like, oh, definitely do not invite that guy, and all of that stuff like leaks out, and the system lacks resilience. So I think this is partly just a pitch to like support your local organizer and make them feel very good and happy. But more specifically, I thought it would be interesting to go around one last time and say, do you have any asks? It could be wishes, but there could be specific asks. Like what would help you manifest your vision more easily from our vast network of lovely, generous, talented people?
Straightforwardly, don't take uh, don't take it for granted that somebody other than you will make things happen. um, have uh, like channel the agency to go and make what you want to happen. Because the organizers that exist are great. They were just like you at some point, and they only have limited capacity. So that would be my ask.
Right.
What's mine? I think believe me. Like if I say something is gonna be good, then just fucking believe me and like act as if it's gonna be good. I mean, I don't want people like blindly just following what I say. But you know, I'm kind of sat here on Twitter being like, this is a good deal. This is a good, like, here's a place, and like I need people to get on board. I think. But at the same time, I'm kind of becoming okay with like when things like don't work and when they don't happen. To look after myself, I'm actually going away from money towards abundance and towards things being free. I mean, I've been this for a long time, but yeah, it seems to be going better for me if I rely on others and they share what they have with me, and I just reciprocate. So that's happening a lot, but I'm currently staying at another organizer's place. And so that's an organizer. So that person knows how hard it is. And so now I'm like, yeah, because I'm not grabby about like, oh, I have to live here now forever. I'm able to stay here, but that is still another organizer. So yeah, I guess like just keep sharing with each other, please, and especially me. Yeah, and I don't reach out for help very often, but like if I do, can like the response be quick, please? Yeah, that's all that's coming up. And if I'm like, hey, let's do this, then just like believe me. Like don't make me fight to have this voice that I think that something might work or be good. Don't be like, oh, I don't know about that, when you don't know about anything, you know. But yeah, thank you for sharing your stuff with me and your homes, because I don't need any of it. I'm just using it for a little while, so yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. I was having a conversation with my housemate last night, and she was like, I don't, people throw around this term emotional labor, and like, it's kind of annoying, but like you do emotional labor when you get up, you are laboring every day. And that is not that. I mean, there are some days that are not like that, but that is the hardest part of Vibe Camp, and that is it is quite laborious. So I was just thinking about that, and I'm sure all the organizers have to deal with a lot of that. There are people who are having a bad time, or who don't think somebody should go, or whatever. You just end up embroiled in so many situations, and you are the kind of the lightning rod for all of that. But as far as asks go, I feel so humbled that like we're still at a point where I have more people who want to help with Vibe Camp than I can sort of maneuver. So yeah, we're also just really hoping that more people think of things that would be cool, and either talk to us or figure out a way to do it on your own. We're still sort of figuring out the financials. I would really like to be paying more people and paying the people who are getting paid more. We sort of we care a lot about our sort of values within the team, and there are a lot of ways that we could be making more money that we're just not okay with doing. So that's kind of an ongoing process. If anybody ever has ideas for me, I'm very open to hearing them. And otherwise, yeah, be kind to each other. I don't know.
That's so cool. I'm enjoying hearing these rounds. For me, it's a big request, which I'm not used to making, but it's the phase that I'm in, is I want to buy a retreat center. I want it to be a hub for this community, and I need to raise probably about €500,000 to do it. And I've got some early commitments, so that's very motivating. It's a small amount of money for a big impact, and I'm looking for people that have like 50,000 plus that they can lend us for a long time with a low and patient rate of return. It's just you're just giving me a mortgage because I don't have great credit with the bank. That's kind of the deal, and trust that we're going to do amazing things with it. If that there's a few people out there I know that are in that position. Some of them from Twitter have already come through. So another like 5 to 10 of those people sending me a message would accelerate the golden age, our little sliver of the golden age, that would make a big difference.
I'm going to go
and
into
because
politics and abolish the ridiculous land prices. Like I think it's insane. Like I'm going to help by going at the other angle.
Great.
Be like, property is not investment, and we should be finding more land. It is not scarce. There is plenty of it, and there's loads under the sea. Like this model where the boomers are somehow millionaires because they existed, it is not good, and somehow we need to change it, because right now there is no room for maneuver for anyone anywhere to do anything that's new. And so yeah, we've got to explode that fucking thing.
Well, good news about collapsing populations is it's going to do something funny to the land price.
Yes. See?
Sorry, everyone.
That's true.
I said that was the last question, but I did have another thought come to mind, which is, Collie, you mentioned like, don't take it for granted, and hey, you can do this, and I wonder how available each of us are for supporting other people that would like to be doing what we're doing. Like, do you all have capacity? Are you up for it?
Yeah, I did it just this morning.
Yeah, I am very up for it, with the caveat that I sometimes, after having a conversation with people, I will suggest they go talk to someone like Collie or Kai or Jess, who's done a smaller scale event, because some of what I might have to say is useful and not all of it is, because they're just different considerations when you're going to scale.
Yeah, cool. I'm personally really up for it as well. I have a slight complication that advising people on group stuff, event stuff, organizations is my job as well. So it's like, if you are in a position where you want to practice your agency and put on a Twitter event, I want to help you. And if you can pay me, then do it. And if you can't, then you don't have to. That's kind of the deal, I think. Part of my vision, which I didn't say, I think is just like, I would really love to see like 100 new organizers in the next 18 months, and that people know that it's kind of pretty easy to organize a party for 30 people for a weekend, and you can make it really powerful and meaningful, and it's like hugely significant for almost everyone that's involved, and it's a good thing to do. That would be nice.
Yep, I'm also up for it. I have a lot of free time on my hands these days, being unemployed, but
Thank you for your service.
Shout out to everyone who already has done that, because I can think off the top of my head at least 10 people who have done a 30-person party in the last year, and there's more to come. So well done, we see you.
Yeah. That's awesome. Are there any last comments before I press the stop button?
I'm so sorry to do this. I just want to plug that event one more time, tns.camp. If anybody is interested in this idea of like network societies and digging in really deep, would love for you to apply to come. Sorry, I feel so.
No, it's good. It's good. I'm like, more plugs. Any plugs or blessings, most welcome.
No, don't bother me till next year.
let's plug everything. Tree Week, Simon Oller is doing that in Berlin in September. I'd plug Collie Camp, but I don't have confirmed dates for it next year, but it'll probably be in April. We'll work it up.
There's 2 upcoming micro-solidarity camps, one in the Pacific Northwest in mid-July, and then one in Austria at the very end of August. And you can go to microsolidarity.cc to find information about those events. And actually, there's even scholarship money available, so if you're broke, you can still go. It's fine. It's one of the nice things about the network. There's money flowing in it. Okay, thanks very much, people. That was really, really fun for me and hopefully of interest to some of the listeners, and they will leave their questions in the Twitter thread, which is no doubt below the screen here.
Thank you guys. This was really
Thank
fun.
you.
This was great to be part of. Thank you.
Yeah.